India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Unmissable. I am Shweta Kothari. On the show today, in Day Tonight, Maran versus Maran, the explosive Sun TV family feud spills out. There is talk of fraud, dividend and power struggle at the top. Also coming up is the Kerala tragedy. A 25-year-old woman ends her life after public humiliation for meeting with a male friend. And in Deep Dive, are Israel and Iran sliding towards a nuclear war? All that and more. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Prime Minister Modi says no to Trump's coffee invite, chooses to visit Lord Jagannath's land over White House meeting. And Prime Minister Modi unveils 5,900 crore rupees project in Bihar, flags off Vande Bharat trains, calls NDA a symbol of progress and slams opposition for dynastic politics and anti-Dalit stance. A Kerala woman allegedly ends her life after being shamed for meeting a male friend. 3 people arrested in Kannur as victims note points to public humiliation. And Maran brothers in a bitter feud over Sun TV shares. Then the accuses Kalanidhi of fraud, threatens regulatory action on Sun Group. And our top story on Day Tonight, another life has now been lost to moral policing, this time in Kerala's Kannur district. Now, a 25-year-old Rasina from Parambai died by suicide after facing public humiliation and trauma for simply sitting in a car with a male friend. The incident took place near Achkara Mosque in Pinirai, where local men allegedly assaulted her friend, seized their devices and shamed Rasina in public. Now, just 2 days later, Rasina was found hanging in her bedroom. 3 men, MC Mushbir, K.A. Faisal and V.K. Rafnas, have now been arrested. Police say that her suicide note clearly points to a harassment that continued following the incident. While her family denies any moral policing angle and blames the male friend instead, the police maintains that Rasina's note makes no mention of him. In fact, her mother defended the 3 arrested youth, calling them innocent and alleging that the friend took Rasina's money and gold. The victim's friend, who was reportedly assaulted and now untraceable, remains a key figure in the case. Search operations are currently underway. Kannur City Police Commissioner Nitin Raj confirms that the incident is directly linked to the ongoing investigation in Rasina's death. The accused have been booked in abetment to suicide case. Addressing the media, the Commissioner clarified that the victim's suicide note makes no mention of the friend. However, police have now assured that all allegations raised by the victim's family will be thoroughly probed.
അങ്ങനെ സംഭവം ഉണ്ടായിട്ടില്ലേ?
ഇല്ല, സംഭവം ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ടോന്നുള്ളത് നമ്മൾ അറിയുന്നില്ലല്ലോ.
ഇപ്പൊ അറസ്റ്റിലായിട്ടുള്ളവർ യഥാർത്ഥ പ്രതികളല്ലേ?
ഇല്ല, യഥാർത്ഥ പ്രതികളല്ല, പാവം പിള്ളേരാ. ഇപ്പം അറസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്ന മക്കളുണ്ടല്ലോ, ഒന്നിനും പോകാത്ത പിള്ളേരാ.
അവരെങ്ങനെ ഈ വിഷയത്തിൽ എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഇത് ഇടപെട്ടത്?
ഇവര് കണ്ടപ്പം പിന്നെ നമ്മളെ സ്വന്തം പെങ്ങളല്ലേ ഇത്, ചേച്ചിയുടെ പിള്ളേരാണല്ലോ. സ്വന്തം പിള്ളേരായത് കാരണം ഇവർ ഒരു നാണക്കേടിൽ കാരണം ഇനി എന്താ ഇവിടെ കൂടെ കാണുന്നു ചോദിച്ചു പറയും. പിന്നെ നിങ്ങൾ ഇടപെടേണ്ട കാര്യമില്ല എന്ന് രണ്ടാളും പറഞ്ഞു.
And moving on, a high-profile family feud has now erupted in Tamil Nadu's most powerful family, the Maran family, between former Union Minister Dayanidhi Maran and his elder brother Kalanidhi Maran, the chairman of Sun TV network. Dayanidhi has accused Kalanidhi of financial crimes dating back to 2003, demanding the reversal of alleged fraudulent shares which were allotted in the Sun TV Private Limited, a company the brothers once built together. Now, what really transpired between the two brothers since this morning? Let's break it down. To begin with, there is a dispute regarding share transfer. Dayanidhi claims that the trouble began just days after their father, Murasoli Maran's death in 2003. He alleges that the shares were illegally transferred to Kalanidhi at just 10 rupees each without either valuation or stakeholder consent. He also claims that shares were taken from their mother, who's Malika Maran, and even from M.K. Dayalu, the widow of DMK founder Karunanidhi, again without any legal documentation. What came next was a fight over dividend worth thousands of crore rupees being transferred. Dayanidhi alleges that Kalanidhi pocketed over 5,900 crore rupees dividend up until 2023 and 4,550 crores, which is 4,500 crore rupees approximately in financial year 24 alone, all from shares he allegedly acquired improperly. He calls these white-collar crimes of the highest order, saying that they harmed legitimate stakeholders, including other family members. Then there is dispute regarding salaries and settlements drawn. Dayanidhi has also named Kalanidhi's wife, Kaveri Kalanidhi, accusing her of drawing an annual salary of a whopping 87 crore rupees from Sun TV. He even claims that Kalanidhi paid about 500 crore rupees to their sister, Anbhukarasi Maran, using funds who were diverted through family accounts, labeling it an attempt to hush up the alleged fraud. And finally, there are threats being made to go public and to go to the regulator. The former minister has now threatened to escalate the matter to the government regulators, including DGCA and the BCCI and even the centre, potentially endangering licenses tied to Sunrisers Hyderabad as well as SpiceJet. Now, Sun TV has come to its defense. In response, Sun TV network has rejected all the allegations, calling them misleading, speculative and defamatory. The company insists that all corporate actions were vetted before its IPO and that the feud has no bearing on Sun TV's daily operations at all. In fact, this feud between two of Tamil Nadu's most prominent media and political figures raised tough questions about corporate governance, family control and the fate of India's largest regional media empire. And another aviation scare has now emerged in India, this time involving an Indigo flight which was bound to Madurai. The aircraft, carrying about 68 passengers, developed a technical snag just 30 minutes after taking off from Chennai. The pilot immediately requested clearance to return and the flight landed safely back in Chennai. Thankfully, no injuries were reported. This comes amid a series of aviation-related incidents that have put India's air safety under sharp focus once again, because this comes barely days after. Remember, the 12th of June was that tragic day when Air India crash in Ahmedabad left the nation shaken. About 270 people have died. Since then, multiple flights, both domestically as well as internationally, have now faced diversions due to technical issues, including Indigo's Flight 6C-2006 from Delhi to Leh. With back-to-back instances now piling up, questions are also being raised about aircraft maintenance, safety protocols and the overall preparedness of India's aviation sector. Aviation authorities have also ramped up inspections, initiated stringent checks to reassure the flying public and restore confidence in India's aviation system. But the questions continue to be raised. And moving on, the Bombay High Court has now raised strong concerns over the rising number of deaths in Mumbai's suburban train network, suggesting automatic doors are a possible solution. The bench of Chief Justice Alok Radhe and Justice Sandeep Marne are were hearing as of today a public interest litigation concerning the recurring deaths of railway passengers due to overcrowding and falling from moving trains. Now, Chief Justice Radhe remarked, and I quote, "You should provide automatic doors that close. This is a suggestion from a layman and we are not experts," unquote. The court cited official data showing about 3,588 deaths in 2024 alone. And that's an average of 10 lives lost every day. The judges called the figure deeply disturbing, referring specially to the recent Mumbai tragedy, where 4 commuters died and 9 others were injured after falling off from overcrowded trains. The court was informed that a high-level committee has been set up to look into these fatal instances, and a separate panel led by Divisional Safety Officer of Central Railways is probing the Mumbai incident. But the court remains sceptical, observing that whatever the state is doing is not enough, as the death toll continues to rise unabated. Appearing for the Railways, Additional Solicitor General Anil Singh cited operational challenges, including construction limits during working hours and the need for platform upgrades. Still, the court directed both the state as well as the Railways to submit detailed reports on committee finding and a clear timeline for implementation. The matter will be heard once again on 14th of July as the court pushes for urgent reforms to make Mumbai's lifeline safer for commuters. And moving on now, the investigation into the deadly crash of Air India flight AI71 in Ahmedabad is now expanding in a new direction. Sources confirm that the investigators are now comparing the crash to a 2020 emergency landing at the London's Gatwick Airport involving a similar Boeing 787 Dreamliner model. That flight too had suffered dual engine failure due to fuel system contamination but managed to land safely. Now, in the case of AI171, the outcome was tragically different. Preliminary findings suggest that the aircraft suffered mid-air electrical failure within seconds of taking off, followed by the apparent failure of the ram air turbine, or the RAT, an emergency system which is meant to power critical functions. The investigators now believe that AI171 did not gain enough altitude, which was only about 625 feet, before it crashed, slamming into a medical college hostel, killing as many as 33 people in the hostel premises. Experts say that the flight needed at least 3,600 feet to stabilize or to return. Now, while damaged black boxes have been recovered, officials say that data extraction may require US help from the National Transportation Safety Board. The probe is now focused on fuel integrity. Teams are now examining the wreckage and technical logs from recent flights, including a Delhi-Paris and Tokyo-Delhi run flight, for any signs of water or other contaminants in the fuel system. Much like the Gatwick incident, the engineers had cleared this aircraft too just hours before it took off. So far, officials say that there is no evidence of cockpit error in the Ahmedabad crash. The pilots likely attempted a manual recovery but simply ran out of altitude. The investigation continues with a focus now on whether a silent fuel system flaw may have doomed flight AI171. And the much anticipated Axiom 4 mission, which was to carry India's group captain Shubhranshu Shukla to International Space Station, has once again been delayed. Originally scheduled for 22nd of June, the launch has now been put on hold by NASA, which says that it needs more time to assess the ISS system. NASA said that the interconnected systems aboard the ISS require thorough review before any crew members can safely dock. Now, this isn't the first delay. The mission has already been postponed multiple times. First, from 29th of May this year, due to a range of issues, including electrical harness problem in the SpaceX Dragon, a liquid oxygen leak in the Falcon 9 rocket, weather condition, and the persistent leak in the Zebda model, which were first detected way back in 2019. The Axiom 4 crew, which includes Peggy Whiston from the US, Shubhanshu Shukla from India, Stadzo Yuzanski from Poland, and Tibor Kapu from Hungary, remain in quarantine in Florida, standing ready for the liftoff once the clearance is given. Now, when it does take off, Shukla will become only the second Indian in space after Rakesh Sharma, the first ever Indian to visit the ISS. But for now, the mission's new launch date is expected to be announced in coming days as NASA continues its safety evaluations. And as tensions escalate between Iran and Israel, India has announced the evacuation of its stranded nationals in a war-hit Israel under Operation Sindhu, and is yet another development coming in. The first evacuation flight of Indian nationals from Iran is likely to arrive in India around 2 a.m. tonight. The flight from Yerevan is expected to land at 2 a.m. 2 evacuation flights will be arriving in India tonight. The first flight is expected to land in Delhi at about 11:30 p.m. and the second flight will also land in Delhi at around 3 a.m. this morning. The first flight will come from Mashhad and the second flight will be coming from Ashgabat. The move comes a day after India evacuated around 100 citizens from Iran, including 90 students from Jammu and Kashmir. In a statement, the Ministry of External Affairs confirmed that Indian nationals who wish to leave Israel will be evacuated via land borders and then flown back to India. The Indian embassy in Tel Aviv has also urged citizens to register online if they haven't already and provide a 24/7 emergency contact number for support. Now, earlier today, India successfully, in fact, evacuated about 100 citizens from Iran, flying them to Armenia, then Doha, before they safely landed in New Delhi. The safe return of these students brought a wave of relief for families across India as diplomatic and security challenges continue to evolve in the region. Now, India now continues to rescue, and the mission continues from both Iran as well as Israel, reaffirming its commitment to safety of Indian nationals abroad. And in a major development for international students, the US State Department has now announced that it will be restarting student visa processing once again, but with a strict new requirement. All student visa applicants must now make their social media accounts public for review. According to the new policy, consular officers will be scanning social media activity for any content deemed hostile to the United States, its culture, governance, and institution. The announcement comes after last month's temporary pause in visa interviews imposed by Donald Trump's administration to prepare for enhanced vetting protocols. Applicants who refuse to adjust privacy settings may face visa denials, with officials citing concerns over hidden online behavior or attempts to evade security screening. The move has triggered concerns among students worldwide, many of whom are now racing against the clock to secure travel, housing and paperwork before the new academic year begins. The State Department says that enhanced vetting is meant to ensure comprehensive background checks and to safeguard national interests. As the US opens its doors once again to foreign students, it is also making one thing clear: online transparency will now be a part of your entry ticket into the United States. And in a major diplomatic revelation, Pakistan's Deputy Prime Minister Ishaq Dar has confirmed that Islamabad reached out to the US and also to Saudi Arabia for de-escalating tensions following India's airstrikes under Operation Sindoor. Speaking to Geo News, Dar admitted that Saudi Prince Faisal bin Salman had personally offered to convey Pakistan's willingness to halt hostilities to India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. Saudi Prince Faisal bin Salman called and asked if he could tell Jaishankar that Pakistan is ready to stop. The remarks back India's long-standing assertion that it was in fact Pakistan that pursued peace and not the other way around. Dhar also acknowledged that India has successfully struck key Pakistani military assets, including Noor Khan and Shorkot air bases, contradicting previous Pakistani claims of repelling the strikes. Reacting to Dhar's statement, BJP's Amit Malviya said that Pakistan is, and I quote, unravelling under the weight of its own admissions, and that India's strikes were a strategic validation. BJP spokesperson C.R. Kesavan echoed the sentiment, accusing Congress party of spreading misinformation, saying that Dhar's remarks reiterate what India's DGMO had already confirmed. The BJP's maintains that these admissions confirm that there was in fact no third-party mediation and that the ceasefire was a direct result of India's decisive military posturing under Operation Sindoor. A moment of diplomatic vindication for India and a national security embarrassment for Pakistan yet again. In a major development, the White House has now confirmed that former President Donald Trump will decide within the next 2 weeks whether the US will intervene in the ongoing Israel-Iran conflict. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed Trump's remarks and said that based on the facts that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
I have a message directly from the President, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." The President's top priority right now is ensuring that Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon and providing peace and stability in the Middle East.
And Trump had earlier hinted at the possibility of military involvement, saying that Iran wants to negotiate amid increasing pressure and conflict escalation. Listen in.
Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction. Why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country.
And the comments suggest a strategic pause as the US weighs its next move amid diplomatic back channels and demands that Iran halt uranium enrichment and nuclear activities. All eyes are now on Washington as the world watches whether America will enter yet another Middle East conflict. Time now for a very short break. We'll be back with more on the other side. You're watching Unmissable.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
This is the tribe of your dreams.
You and I, we are dreamers. You and I, we are believers.
Introducing the all-new Skoda Kailak. Own your dream.
Skoda. In this world, there are a number of gender.
What determines whether I am male or whether I am female?
When the child is growing up, it's also interacting with the complex environment around.
The child is still exploring.
That is what is called gender identity to start with.
Sexual orientation is simply sexual preference.
Here, the big daddy of SUVs.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Welcome back. You're watching Unmissable. In the deep dive today, the Iran-Israel war has now entered its 8th day. The death toll is mounting and there is no diplomatic breakthrough just as yet. More than 50 fighter jets attacked selected targets of the nuclear weapons program and industrial sites for production of missile components in Tehran overnight. They also struck several Iranian missile systems and radar installations in areas of Isfahan and Tehran. In fact, the Israeli Air Force continue to operate freely in Iranian skies, striking military targets of the Iranian regime in the western and central parts of Iran.
מאז שהתחלנו אותו, זה מבצע שנראה קרוב אבל הוא רחוק, הוא 1,500 קילומטר מגבולות ישראל, עד 2,000 קילומטר. אנחנו מעמיקים את הפגיעה ונמשיך לפגוע בה. יש לנו עוד מטרות רבות לפגוע בהם. המבצע הזה נערכנו להמשכיות שלו. ככל שאנחנו מעמיקים את הפגיעה, אנחנו מאפשרים לעצמנו עוד מרווח ואפשור של המבצע לאורך זמן. נמשיך לפעול לאורך זמן, עד שנעמוד ביעדי המבצע.
And in retaliation, Iran has now fired 30 missiles at Israel and struck the Dimona Nuclear Research Center in Israel. Israel had launched, remember, Operation Rising Lion on 13th of June, and after this surprise attack on Iran, and Iran further retaliated with Operation True Promise 3. This direct military confrontation has seen Israel using fighter jets and drone strikes across Iran, targeting their nuclear and military sites, including surface-to-surface missile production facilities and detecting radar sites, as well as surface-to-air missile launchers, in order to stop Iran from making a nuclear bomb. And since then, there's been tit-for-tat strikes. Both have been hitting each other. As the war seems to be now intensifying, with both countries unwilling to back down, what seems to be a worrying factor is the possibility of war going nuclear or strikes on nuclear facilities triggering a nuclear fallout. Adding to that is the US angle. US now mulling over military strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. President Donald Trump has approved plans to attack Iran, but has not made a final decision on whether to strike the country just as yet. This is what Donald Trump said.
I may do it, I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you this, that Iran's got a lot of trouble, and they want to negotiate. And I said, why didn't you negotiate with me before? All this death and destruction, why didn't you negotiate? I said to the people, why didn't you negotiate with me 2 weeks ago? You could have done fine. You would have had a country.
Iran has said that all options are now on the table in case of US intervention, and that it will strike at the US bases as well across the Middle East if the US intervenes.
حد زده میشد که در این حرکت خباثت آمیز رژیم صهیونیستی آمریکا هم دخالت داره. با این حرفای اخیری که اینها میزنن این هست روز به روز تقویت میشه. ملت ایران در مقابل جنگ تحمیلی محکم میسته، همچنانی که تا حالا ایستاده. در مقابل صلح تحمیلی محکم میسته. ملت ایران در مقابل تحمیل تسلیم هیچ کس نمیشه.
And then Russia comes in. Russia has already warned of catastrophic development should the US use a tactical weapon. As per the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, the world is millimeters away from a catastrophe should the US join Israel in striking nuclear facilities in Iran.
Хотели бы особо предостеречь Вашингтон от военного вмешательства в ситуацию, что стало бы крайне опасным шагом с поистине непредсказуемыми негативными последствиями.
In fact, Russian President Vladimir Putin delivered a forceful message declaring that Moscow has and will support Iran. China is also supporting Iran. Pakistan has come out in support of Iran and urged Muslim countries to unite against Israel, even as the US and Pakistani surveillance planes fly on the Pakistan-Iran border. On the other side is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and he said that Israel is not ruling out eliminating Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, as that would end the forever war that Iran wants. And on the 8th day of the war, with both sides not backing down, we see two sides taking shape. The question we are asking is this slowly becoming a world war? And will the US join the war or continue to help Israel? And will the Muslim world unite to support Iran? And would this mean that Shia-Sunni divide be kept aside if this were to happen, if at all? And how can this war be stopped, and who and what will stop it? Let me quickly introduce our guest. Joining me is Ambassador Jains Gupta, former Indian diplomat. Also with us is Major General V.K. Datta. He's a defense and geopolitical expert. And also on the show is Robinder Sachdev, a foreign affairs expert and president of the Image India Institute. Gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out for joining us here on Unmissable. I want to come to you first. Major General V.K. Datta, the recent developments that have come by the way of Iran further escalating the fight when it comes to the ongoing escalations between the two countries, the use of cluster munitions that we saw overnight is in contravention to what is now believed to be the geopolitics as well as the rules of war. which have been on now for a while. What does it really mean? What sort of implication does it have geopolitically as well as legally? And would this also mean now that Israel is going to retaliate perhaps by using similar munitions which are not allowed?
Sweta, I'll very quickly go back to a little bit of background. 7 of October 2023. Who started the war? Hamas attacking Israeli civilians, killing, mutilating, and raping women and carrying back hostages. That is 7 October 2020. Who instigated that? Who was behind that? Who was standing behind Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi, and even in Syria, the group? It was Iran. It was Iran and its proxies which started this entire episode, which we are now seeing culminating into a direct one-to-one between Israel and Iran. Now I'll say that all international rules, regulations, and ethos and ethics were thrown to the dust on 7th of October 2023, when by proxy Israel was attacked without any reason, without any provocation. Now Israel has been trying to decimate Hamas in Gaza. Hezbollah, they have already almost put them down, and there's been an agreement. Syria, of course, there's been a regime change, and Houthis have been stuck even by the US and the Israelis to quite in a large extent. And now comes the turn of Israel versus Iran, because that is the head of the Hydra, which is Israel had to hit, because that was the end point. And now the Israeli aim was that to make sure that Iran is not able to produce a nuclear device, and also to maybe try and attempt a regime change. But more than the regime change, they want to decimate the capability of Iran to not be able to produce a nuclear device. Now that is a question mark. The question mark is, while Israel is striking military targets, their leadership, their nuclear scientists, Iran in turn is targeting civilian targets, residential areas, hospitals. Now that is where the entire international community has to give it a thought. Who started it? What are they doing? What are they attempting to? And mind you, while we are only seeing a clash between Israel and Iran at the moment, America is still mulling over whether it should join in. Russia giving warning, China supporting, Iran sending in weapons. And another factor, Iran is not a small country. It is a very large country, old civilization. They fought an 8-year war with Iraq when number of people were supporting Iraqis and Iran was on one side. So let's not underestimate Iran, and let's not also underestimate Israel.
And I want to talk about Iran in just a minute from now. Let me also quickly get in Ambassador Jains Gupta. Ambassador, we're talking about civilian casualties. Both Iran and Israel are claiming civilian casualties. Who, according to you, could be the players that can really stop the war? Because it's entered its 8th day. There is a deadlock that continues. US is undecided at the moment. Will take about 2 more weeks. Who could be a player, that formidable player that could perhaps really calm things down in the Middle East? And more importantly, what could be the terms at which Iran and Israel may finally give in?
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. But I think at this present juncture, none of the three top military powers, whether it is the US or China or Israel or Russia, has the domination or ability to prevent this war from going any further. Having said that, the US still has a lot of influence over Israel, because Israel depends on the US support, tacit or explicit, to carry out its attacks, some of which, on the Iranian nuclear facilities, including those meant for peaceful purposes, which are against international law. So if the US were to assert its authority over Israel behind the scenes and say that enough is enough, now you must desist. And at the same time, wisdom prevails on the Iranians to come to the negotiating table, because this is not the way it is going to get solved. Attacks will take place and there will be collateral damage or civilian casualties. Today, I think the Israelis are claiming that a hospital has been hit. by the Iranian missiles. Now, the reporters have not been allowed to go near that site because there is apparently a nuclear facility close to that hospital, which has also been hit, perhaps.
Right.
That is the conjecture. So, today in Geneva, UK, Germany, France, and the EU representatives have met the Iranians to try to work out some kind of a feasible, negotiated end or ceasefire to this present conflict. Now, the Iranians have their backs to the wall. Their air defense systems are in tatters. Today, I think, or last night, the Israelis sent about 50 warplanes, and they have hit the missile manufacturing capabilities, the missile launching centers of Iran. So Iran is at the receiving end, but it will have to be given some kind of an honorable exit. And to say that, we will kill Khamenei and we will want a regime change.
I think that the question therefore is, what's an honorable exit? At this point, what could be an honorable exit? Khamenei is not backing down anytime soon. I think he's made his intentions very clear. In fact, also so far as going to issue threats that if US intervenes, we are going to bomb their naval bases. Robinder Sachdev, I think the question that all foreign affairs experts today, any person with any remote sense of trying to bring in peace in the growing hostilities in the Middle East would be asking is, what would it take for Iran to back down? It's not backing down. It has no intentions of backing down.
I mean, a great question. Honestly, I think the answer is perhaps all across. But let's say, what would it take for the war to stop, or for the hostilities to cease, or the conflict to cease? Even that is not, I mean, the probability is low of that also right now. But yes, as one of our esteemed colleagues was saying, the only one who could bring about some change in this is without doubt the United States. The United States is providing air defense cover to Israel. Whatever missiles that Iran is shooting, about 10% of them are getting through into Israel. That's what we are seeing, the demonstrations. But that's coming after the defensive layers of the US and British and then the Israeli systems. And secondly, the US provides over $4 billion annually for defense budget of Israel. Israel has a defense budget of over $24 billion. The US gives an additional $4 billion. And plus as well, the weapons, the interceptors and all. So the US does have good amount of leverage in this right now. It depends how much is it willing or will be able to use it, because for the US to use its leverage, that's where the domestic politics comes up of the United States. So as of now, it's, I think, pretty difficult to say as to how Iran would back down or Israel would cease the attacks, neither of which seems to be happening in the near term. Israel is continuing with its air attacks. But remember one more thing, General Datta would maybe absolutely be the right guy to say, no war has been won solely by air power. So Israel will, yes, damage Iran to a large extent. And as far as the question of regime change is concerned, yeah, sure. I mean, whatever it be, if it means they kill Khamenei, if Khamenei is killed, the Revolutionary Guard in Iran will gain even more power, and they're even more radical hardliners. So if Netanyahu is thinking that by eliminating Khamenei, they will be able to bring Iran to its knees, and Iran will, throw up its hands and say that, okay, we are done with it, we agree to whatever you say, I absolutely doubt it.
I have to come back to you, Ambassador, at this point. I think we were talking about the cost of war, and we were also speaking to, how difficult it will be for Iran to continue at it, given that its nuclear facilities are in tatters. The cost that it's incurring to continue war with Israel is also extremely high. But so far as Israel is concerned, we were playing those numbers up just a couple of seconds ago. The cost, the inflation for this war to continue would come down to about 3% of their GDP, which essentially means that even for Israel, it is not an easy battle. Iran is a formidable enemy.
it is true that the war will have extraordinarily high costs. Because even though the Americans may be helping with their weapons and with their aid, etc., a lot of money is going out of Israel to buy the weapons and to keep them, the Iron Dome, etc., in place. So the war is going to exact a lot of costs on both sides. But the Iranians, mind you, they have their backs to the wall, and they have been hit by the sanctions for a very, very long time. So they are accustomed to having, to bear hardships for a long time. So I think, and today after the Friday prayers, there were demonstrations in many parts of Iran against the Israeli attacks, and of course the Western powers, especially the US, support to Israel. So Iran, I think, Qatar can play an important mediating role. The Europeans who are trying in Geneva to bring the Iranians to the negotiating table, they have already brought them to the negotiating table, but they must find out what is it that the Iranians would put down as a red line. That the attacks against their peaceful facilities, nuclear facilities like Natanz, that must stop. One. Two, there is no point in saying that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon when Iran is saying that we don't have a nuclear weapon at the moment.
Yeah, Ambassador, this reminds me somehow of Iraq. Come to think of it, any person who remotely knows on what really transpired with Iraq, there was supposed to be a cache of weapons that was never found. Saddam Hussein gone, war started, the entire country was left in tatters, still struggling to come back on its knees and stand on its feet, and no nuclear weapon found.
Yes. In fact, it has been now established that these weapons of mass destruction, which I think the Britain's, Prime Minister Tony Blair and George Bush, they were putting forward as the cause for attacking Iraq. There was enough evidence on the table to say that Iraq did not have, Saddam Hussein did not have WMDs at that point of time. And, of course, much later as well. So, this is all a kind of a charade that is being played out. And to say that, Khamenei will be taken out, we know where he is, we can attack him at any point of time. I think that is carrying things too far. So, wisdom must prevail. There must be intermediation to find out what is it that the Iranians would accept as an honorable solution. The Iranians, there are some stray reports which are coming out saying that the Iranians would come to the negotiating table provided the Israelis stop attacking the Iranian facilities, one, and there is some kind of an apology in whatever terms it is given.
Which is highly improbable, Ambassador. I think, thank you for being a voice of reason, but I think it's highly improbable. Major General Datta, the way we see it today, none of them are backing down. But at the same time, let's talk about the red line enforcement. Now, US, while being on wait and watch mode, continues to give aerial support to Israel and emboldens it in big possible way. When and what can lead to that red line enforcement? What, according to you, would be conducive measures that can bring a red line enforcement in the area? As Ambassador pointed out, it would include perhaps Israel apologizing, but that's not going to happen.
Sweta, the thing is, there is no hunt for a weapon of mass destruction per se as a bogey to attack Iran. Iran has been attacked by Israel because Iran says that Israel and the Jews have got no right to exist on this earth. So its existence is a threat to Israel as far as they are concerned. When a nation says that they have got no right to survive, Israel has to strike back because of the reason that Israel was attacked first by the proxies of Iran. So now the question is that what is the red line? The red line is that Iran firstly must recognize Israel as a nation and forget about his desire to finish off every Jew on this earth. So that is the first. Second is he must cap his nuclear program so that it doesn't make a nuclear device. But I personally feel that over the years, if they have been able to make such hypersonic missiles, I'm very sure they must have already come to a weapon-grade nuclear device, maybe not very many, but some of them. So be rest assured they might be having a nuclear device.
In which case, Major General,
survive.
in which
Israel
case,
or
sir,
Iran
attacking their nuclear
is a question
facility
of
would not
distance
be,
or-
in your assessment, in which case, if you believe that they've already devised a nuclear weapon, if they've been successfully able to devise nuclear weapon, attacking their nuclear facilities, don't you think is counterintuitive?
See, the thing is that when you want to kill me, I will come with everything I have to kill you. And that is what Israelis are doing. They have to make sure that their existence is not threatened. Now, America and the European Union, I believe the British, German and the French, there is a meeting going to be held between the Iranians. Let's see what turns out. I personally feel they must get to some sanity. They must be sane thinking people. Forget about the rhetoric of finishing off Israel. Israel is a reality. If you want to finish them, they'll also come and finish you. And this will be a nuclear flashpoint. If a nuclear exchange takes place, it will be here in between Iran and Israel, and not between Russia, Ukraine, or anybody else. This I'm telling you. And this is the most hot spot of the world right now today. And therefore, all the sane thinking people in the world, whether American, Russians, Chinese, and Iranians themselves, have to think that do they want to start a nuclear holocaust, or they want to have some sanity in their brains. You know, this cannot continue. This insanity of trying to finish off one race or one country, or say that you don't have a right to exist, that is no more acceptable in this current world. So I personally feel that the sanity should prevail, and I hope that the Americans and the Russians and the Chinese get together along with the European Union to drive in some sense between Israel and Iran. Both are our friendly countries as far as we are concerned in India, as Iran as well as Israel, and we won't like them to be getting decimated by each other. We wish them all the best. They must survive, but sanity must come. We must, stop this rhetoric of finishing off.
No two thoughts about that. Sanity must prevail, and any nuclear attack, I think, is in nobody's interest. We come from a country of Gandhi, and I think all of you, I believe, firmly believe, an eye for an eye is not helpful for anybody. In this case, it's the fate of the new world order which is at stake. The Middle East, very close to Asia, perhaps India will also have to feel the repercussions if things do go astray. Ravinder Sachdev, from the looks of it, it looks like the war is going to continue, at least for a while. Where do the allies, Beijing and Moscow, come into picture? Russia and China have been relatively silent, although tacitly supporting Iran. At the same time, not doing so explicitly, perhaps fearing the larger ramifications of it, economic and otherwise as well.
Yeah, so true. I mean, it seems that for all intents and purposes, Russia and China both are staying at the periphery, right? Though making the right-sounding statements in terms of their, support for Iran. One. Secondly, talking about the Iraq weapons of mass destruction, I think we were talking to Tony Blair. Colin Powell, the Secretary of State, ran a PowerPoint presentation with the United Nations claiming that this is the evidence that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, right? Now, as of now, it seems that if you go by what the US intelligence says, and that's a split within America also emerging, by the way, between Trump and MAGA who don't war and all. Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence in March, both to the House and to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said that Iran is not producing or not going towards produce or has not enriched enough and is not pursuing an atomic bomb, let's say, or a nuclear device plan. That's the US intelligence saying hardly 3 months ago. Okay, the point is, and the other thing, where I'm a little skeptical, something should happen absolutely towards peace and sanity and common sense, right? But you see, even if, quote unquote, some kind of a ceasefire or a pause is arranged and the Iranians come to the negotiating table, Iran would have to give up something. It'll be the Iranians who will have to kind of, bend down a bit. But it will leave Netanyahu and Israel's project unfinished. Because even if now Iran is stopped, what matters is after 5 years, it will again revive the program. If that is what the Iranians or Israelis believe in. So Israel this time round has to go the full hill. And especially Netanyahu, for him, it's a lifetime project. He will never again have this chance to leave a legacy for his nation as being the savior of
Can't leave
Jewish
it
race.
unfinished. He's calling it a forever war. He can't leave it unfinished. But this is going to be his legacy. He's the man who is responsible for killing Hamas leaders, for finishing Houthis, for killing majority of militia in the Middle East. So perhaps this is going to be it for him. His legacy would be to finish this war, to see it to the hilt. But I have to ask you, V.K. Datta, Major General, this is also a situation, as you said, that Israel continues to feel threatened by Iran. It may be developing nuclear weapon, it may be using it for domestic purposes, for civilian use. Nobody knows for sure because there's no proof of it. But at the same time, with Israel now escalating it and not backing down, I believe there has to be a pause. And if there has to be a pause, it has to be from Israeli side.
Yes, Shweta, see, the thing is, this particular round was not started by Israel. It was instigated by Iran through the proxies, and that is the thing culminating now into this one-to-one assault on each other. Now the thing is that
if they finish the proxies, sir, what's the point of now hitting the nuclear sites?
See, zero tolerance to terrorism, and we have also faced terror under a nuclear umbrella by Pakistan. Pakistan kept on threatening India that mere paas bomb hai. That kind of a nonsense. And if a country has got a nuclear device and then it is supporting terrorism and attacking another country by proxy, that is not acceptable in the world. And without a nuclear device terror like what we face between India and Pakistan, if Iran had a nuclear device and that under the umbrella of a nuclear device, terrorist attacks are carried out against Israel, it will become more threatening. So the thing is that the world has to acknowledge
where does it end?
Should not be nobody
in
with
your
a nuclear
assessment,
device.
Major General, you've served in the area. You've served in the area, sir. In your assessment, where does it really end? Where do you draw the line?
The thing is that, again, I'm just saying the powers that be, whether it's the Americans, the Russians or the Chinese, they have to drive in logic in the head of Iran that you can't support terrorism under a nuclear umbrella or without a nuclear umbrella. You have to make sure that there is zero tolerance to terrorism all over the world. It's not that India. All those countries who have faced terrorism, they know what is the meaning of that. So therefore, any country who supports terrorism should be neutralized and brought down to the knees to make sure that they don't support terrorism in the world. So therefore, as far as I'm concerned, if Iran accepts, okay, fine, no more supporting terrorists, no more asymmetric warfare, no proxy warfare, we'll talk like, educated and sane people in this world to make sure that the earth and the world rises together and there's prosperity and homogeneity. Only then, you cannot have rabid nations in this world trying to destabilize another area or location. So therefore, now it's a question mark. I may be wrong. Somebody may say, no, Israel has been, doing against the Palestinians. You have to understand. You have to let people live.
All right.
When this thing happened on 7th October...
I mean, you have to let people live both sides. I believe, Ambassador, you've got to let people live on both the sides. And I believe the general civilian, the population that has very little to do with war is often the casualty of war. Ambassador Jains Gupta, if the US were to tomorrow join the war, what are we looking at? Are we looking at this war finishing once and for over? And in how many days? And what would that mean for Iran as far as its current regime is concerned?
Well, as the general was mentioning, of course, air superiority will lead to widespread destruction of Iranian assets. But the Iranians are proud people. They have a history stretching back to 3,000 years or more. They are not going to surrender. They are not going to give up. So, their assets may be decimated. The Khamenei may be killed, but the Iranians will continue fighting.
All right.
And no country will be able to dominate. In Iraq, see what has happened. In Libya, what has happened. In Syria, what has happened. The US intervention has not led to a single party government or, a single source of power. So that is what, there will be chaos. So that is what needs to be avoided. And the second point I wanted to make is, that, of course, I take the point that the general is making, but Israel is supposed to have made surreptitiously, has 90 or so nuclear warheads. It is not a signatory to the non-proliferation treaty. So it also can't, you have strict controls over Iran so that they don't develop nuclear weapons. But at the same time, the other side can't keep threatening, that we will use nuclear weapons and decimate the other, Iran. So it has to be a kind of a negotiated settlement, and wisdom has to prevail. Whosoever has dominance over one or the other country has to exercise that dominance for the global good.
Global good, and that would only be ensured if perhaps the parties come and sit at the table, the possibility of which is eluding us at the moment. But that's all we have on the show today. Ambassador Jains Gupta, Major General V.K. Datta, as well as Robinder Sachdev. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for taking time out, for putting this in perspective. We continue to track the latest emerging from Iran and Israel. The war entered its 8th day with no signs of pausing anytime soon. It continues unabated. Missile strikes happening as we speak, and without it, US's intervention likely to continue for a few more days now until either one of them runs out of fuel. We will bring you all those details here, but that's all we have on the show today. Thank you very much for watching.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should.
2.5 lakh strong legacy and counting. Join the big league with the XUV 700 with celebratory offers up to rupees 75,000.
Is this politics of appeasement? That is the ground reality. The violence continued unabated for the next 24 hours. Why is there Mamata for Pahalgam but not for Murshidabad?
Everyone in Pakistan is saying that India has punished us. We are all agreeing that Operation Sindoor is a success. तो problem क्या है? किसका नमाज़े जनाजा निकल रहा था बहावलपुर में और रावलपिंडी में?
जन जन का रखे ध्यान, टीबी मुक्त भारत अभियान।
इस अभियान का नारा टीबी संबंधित भेदभाव को मिटाओ, देश को टीबी मुक्त बनाओ। एक्टिव टीबी रोगी के करीबी संपर्क में आने से टीबी फैल सकता है, लेकिन नियमित उपचार शुरू होते ही टीबी रोगी से दूसरों में बीमारी का संक्रमण बंद हो जाता है। यहाँ तक कि सिर्फ हाथ मिलाने या टीबी रोगी के साथ समय बिताने से टीबी नहीं फैलता। तो बताइए आप, जब टीबी की जांच और उपचार है आसान, तो डर या भेदभाव की कैसी बात? ना शर्माना, ना घबराना, टीबी की जांच करवाना। टीबी के लक्षण होने पर तुरंत अपने नजदीकी निजी या सरकारी अस्पताल या आयुष्मान आरोग्य मंदिर में जाएं। इस संदेश को औरों तक पहुंचाकर आइए टीबी को जड़ से मिटाएं।
हमें इन मरीजों को ज्यादा से ज्यादा जागरूक करने पर भी उतना ही ध्यान देना होगा।
डाउनलोड करें टीबी आरोग्य साथी ऐप।
स्वास्थ्य एवं परिवार कल्याण मंत्रालय द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
Sex and sexuality is viewed as a taboo subject. A lot of people think that they want to have the fruits of pleasure from both the worlds. Sexuality is not just the sex between two people.
At times I'm thinking I'm male, at times I'm thinking I'm female.
Exactly there comes the theory of sexual fluidity.
So the fluidity is about the change in you.
They are confident and happy with what they are.
I want that power.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
2 special flights carrying Indian nationals set to land Delhi late tonight under Operation Sindhu as Iran opens its airspace for India. About 1,000 Indian nationals have been evacuated from war-torn Tehran. Benjamin Netanyahu, the IDF chief, they've met J.D. Vance and Pete Hegseth to discuss potential U.S. support for strikes on Iran. Donald Trump is all set to decide, albeit within the next 2 weeks. Iran's latest missile barrage into Israel's Haifa, injuring 2 in Haifa as visuals show hefty damage due to this fresh attack from Iran. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi met the top EU and UK, French and German diplomats in Geneva to discuss the de-escalation and nuclear concerns. Many looking at this as a water test for the nuclear talks. Has also called on Israel's strikes on nuclear sites as grave war crimes. Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh arrives in Udhampur. The Defence Minister is all set to take part in the International Yoga Day celebrations on the 21st of June. Was earlier seen breaking bread, having meal with the officers at the mess.